Welcome to Bonn Park. I'm Sara Geidlinger.
And I'm Marshall Ward.
And I'm Sam Varteniuk, the Executive Director of the Registry Theatre.
And I'm Saul. Shall we start again?
No,
just you.
And I am Sam's colleague, and he's a good friend of mine. My name is Lawrence McNaught, and I'm the Director of Programming at the Registry Theatre as well.
Welcome to Bonn Park.
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 Well, I grew up in Glasgow, Scotland, and I was a big music fan because my mum listened to the radio all the time, all BBC radio, and in those days it was classical and sort of, they had the what they called the light service, so it was kind of MOR kind of stuff, but from time to time they would actually have one or two popular music shows, and that's where you began to hear some of the pop music of the day, including the Beatles. And it was after they released Love Me Do, which came out at the end of 62, that got them a little bit of profile beyond Liverpool. So they began to tour. They put a lot of time in going up and down the country after putting all the time in Hamburg, of course, that everybody knows about. And anyway, so they wound up coming to Glasgow, and I saw them there. And it was only a few months later that my father, who worked for Marks and Spencer's, the department store, he was promoted to Liverpool. So we wind up in Liverpool. So I was able to see all the other bands that came after the Beatles. They were still knocking around the Iron Door and the Cavern and a couple of other clubs. So I saw a whole bunch of those. It was some kind of youth club thing out in not far from where I lived, and I would go there, and these bands would come in, and I saw a band called the Hollies. Didn't even really know about them at the time, stuff like that, and then down to other clubs, and Jerry and the Pacemakers and Billy Kramer and even Cilla Black, who I recall I didn't pay attention to, but when you handed your coat in at the Cavern Club, she was the coat check girl. Cilla Black, who then went on to have her own big career, So it was kind of a fun time. And then a few years later, my family decided to come to Canada, and so here I am.
What a great way to start a podcast.
No kidding.
All right, let's do our opening.
Oh, yeah. I just want to keep talking about that story. All right, Sam and Lawrence, thank you so much for joining us. We have so much to talk about. The work that you guys have been doing at the KW Registry Theatre, which is actually a venue that Marshall talks about on our show a lot. I don't know if you know this, but the KW Registry is plugged on our show quite a bit because Marshall considers it to be the most beautiful venue that we have in town, and I will agree with that.
Yeah, it's just so beautiful in its simplicity. It really is, to me, the perfect theater. Every seat is an excellent seat, and it's so incredibly versatile, in terms of what you can put in there. Just love it, the warmth of it, and black, how dark it is. And I've even seen like the entrance and exit door used as kind of a part of the staging, where someone exits and goes out.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's the perfect black box, and as you say, Marshall, it's amazingly adaptable. In fact, I think one of the projects that you've alluded to in terms of just the entrance was one of our current board members, Marion Boyer, whose background is in set design. She actually designed this massive set for the Sweeney Todd musical that we did some years ago, and she actually created when you come in the two double doors into the auditorium, that was sort of refashioned into this sort of an entrance, and she even had a 2-level set design, so that when the person's head was chopped off, they actually sort of went down into the second level where the bodies were stored. And so it's an amazingly versatile space, and I think that's what community groups and artists like about it, that when they come in, it's entirely their vision, and they can do exactly what they like with the space and move everything, or even to the point where people said, why aren't your seats kind of just locked in place like a regular theater? We said, well, because community members or groups that come in, they will decide that's not how they want the seating configuration. They'll move them around. They might even put seats on the stage and have activities happening back in where the seating would normally be, because it's a tiered seating, and so groups have used that to perform where the audience would normally be. So it's remarkable. Yeah.
A friend recently went to an independent professional wrestling show at the Registry Theatre. I thought, wow, you can put a 15 by 15 foot ring on the stage? And he said, yeah, and one row of ringside seats.
It kills me that I haven't actually been able to attend a wrestling event that's gone on in my theater, because I'm a huge WWF. I know it's WWE now, but back in the days of, Randy Macho Man Savage and George the Animal Steel, I was a huge wrestling fan, and I'm thrilled that we're able to have wrestling at the Registry. And I've been out of town for every single, and I'm going to be out of town when they're in the theater next. But yeah, I was really excited at the prospect of having professional wrestling.
Yeah, dig it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Sam, did you know that we have a second podcast that's not really well known called An Unscripted Spectacle, Wrestling with Wrestling, and it's all about the world of pro wrestling.
Well, I do now. And I will check
You'll
that
have
out.
to check that out. Yeah, a little plug for our little known show that we're so proud of.
Yeah, but I went to see those guys. They were doing it at the Alpine Club. And I mean, the Alpine Club is fine. And you could get a full sort of 360-degree thing going on. But they couldn't even do the top turnbuckle moves because the roof was too low.
Yeah, I've been to
they
those
had
shows,
to go off the second one. So we're glad that they have more height. And yeah, I thought it would be a no-go for them because you can only have audience on one side. But they're like, no, that works just fine for us. And those guys are performers. Wrestlers are performers. And as soon as they came into the space and started talking to us about rental and space usage, you get a vibe sometimes when you're talking to somebody who really knows theater, performance, and presenting, and they really knew their stuff, and we spoke the same language. So that was really interesting.
You're going to have to make sure that you can only book wrestling events when you're available.
Yeah.
Like just make a calendar of, I'm sorry, we can't book those dates, but these dates here will work.
So
So let's zoom out just a little bit. And for any of our, we have a wide range of different kinds of listeners and different types of people and different ages. So let's just sort of zoom out and explain to people where the Registry Theatre is and what the work is that you do.
So the Registry Theatre is located in downtown Kitchener on the corner of Weber and Frederick Streets. We have the police station on one side of us. We have that old duck-billed courthouse building facing Weber on the other side. We're the building that people walk by for years. We have people who've lived and worked in the area for years and walk by it. It's a gorgeous
building.
Yeah, it's an Art Deco heritage piece. We have architecture students and profs who come around every once in a while to point out the different features on that front. But yeah, we have people who've lived and worked in the area for decades and don't know it's a theater. So we're trying to get a new sign. I think our sign is not flashy enough to try to point out that it's there. But it really is kind of the best kept secret. And we've struggled with that. We kind of like the idea of being a secret little place, but on the other hand, we want people to know about us. So we've been trying to negotiate that space a little bit. But there's three main things that happen at the Registry Theatre. One, is important to note that JM Drama Alumni is the nonprofit charity that runs the Registry Theatre. JM stands for Jerome and Mary, the two Catholic high schools that used to be downtown Kitchener. The JM Drama alumni were high school drama nerds who never wanted the drama party to end. They wanted to continue and that cooperative community experience of doing community theater. And they still sort of form the nucleus of our board of directors. And I guess the ethos of the place about that, everybody's welcome. We want to try to find a way to make everything work. We're working on a shoestring budget, but we're not going to sacrifice our vision on that front. So the community theater piece, usually a show in the summer, is still kind of at the heart of what we do. Even though the other two things, which are our rentals activities and our professional presenting series, have come to dwarf it in terms of financial and just the amount of time and space it takes up in the theater, I think it's really important to note that we're not driven by profit. We're not driven by hardcore objectives around metrics and data. I mean, of course, we want people to come to the theater, but we are really lucky, Lawrence and I, that we can pursue altruistic objectives. We can try to help people tell the stories that need to be told, introduce our community to new music and dance and other new media sort of presentations, and help the world to meet Kitchener and help Kitchener Meet the World, but really focus on local artists and be a part of that arts ecosystem that helps people. A success for us is to see an artist outgrow us. And we don't regard that as a loss. That's a huge success. And then it's for us to find the next generation of artists.
I'm so happy that you said that. When I was reading your information about the Music at the Market live outdoor concert series, there was something in there that really spoke to me. And I know that Marshall, you'll agree for sure. And that's that artists should be paid for their time. Artists should be paid for their time. Artists should be paid for their time and their work, right? And that's something that we've been fighting with for so long. And I bring this point up all the time, but in everyone's life for the last 2 years, since March 2020, however long that's been now, what did everyone turn to for comfort and for enjoyment and for getting us through tough times? Was art, right? And it doesn't mean that all the money has to go to Netflix or, whatever online streaming is there. Artists are out here working, getting, paid, but not always. Working for exposure is a big issue.
Right, yeah, but artists, people die of exposure as well, right?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to get a t-shirt. I love the t-shirt that you're wearing right now that says Nowhere Fast. I feel like I need that right now. Yeah. I'm an adult grown woman who is working in art and people still tell me that it'd be good exposure for me. I'm 46 years old. I am exposed. I am here. If you want my time, it costs money.
And not just artists, but the production folks as well. So we've been putting a real emphasis on not just paying artists, but we were fortunate to get some support from the Department of Canadian Heritage for what we're calling the Welcome Back to the Theatre weekend at the end of this month, September. And I'm as keen to try to pay production folk as well, behind the scenes people, because they are very much a part of our community. They care passionately about the arts. And when people talk about the importance of paying artists, we're trying to make it part of the conversation to say those folks are part of that community and that arts community as well. So yes, we take that very seriously.
Yeah, because if it wasn't for the technicians, the show would not go on. They are really at the heart of any production, and as we've always been saying, artists need to be paid because they are the first. You're quite right, Sarah. That's what got us through COVID. Was enjoying the arts online in so many cases, and in addition to that, at the registry itself, we are bound and determined to pay artists what they're worth as best we can, to the point where there might be some events that we feel are really significant and that we really feel we need to go forward with them, but we know we're probably not going to make a profit on it. So there's sometimes that we will go in to an event and we'll know going in it's going to be a loss leader, but we feel it is so important and significant for the community to see this particular project, and we are the only ones who are going to do it. We're the only ones who are going to bring this to town. As Sam says, our focus is, especially nowadays after COVID, is to support our local artists as best we can. But by the same time, we have nationally known artists who would not come to town otherwise, that we are able to bring in and put into the registry, where our reach actually exceeds our grasp. We will actually do something that you would not expect to find there, and so we've been, especially for the Music at the Market, this was a wonderful opportunity for us to 8 weeks of programming, over 50 different artists, a whole bunch of technicians, all being paid and being paid well because we received funding from Heritage Canada to be able to pay them proper fees, and at that point, of course, they were all local. Everyone was a local artist throughout those 8 weeks of summer in 21, and we really feel that we helped out our local artists with that project.
I promoted a concert at the Registry years ago. It was Jay Semko of the Northern Pikes, and I believe Michael Kelly-Cavan opened.
Indeed.
And if I could sum up that experience in one word, the word would be classy. The Registry offers something very classy. And from the moment I get there, you feel like you're taken care of, that your priority is on that performance that night and making sure it's as good as it can be when it comes to sound and presentation. And then I also value the Registry so much because if you put someone like Jay Semko in there of the Northern Pikes, I've seen him in many different venues over the years, many bars, noisy places, but there's nothing to me like an incredibly special show where an artist is allowed to play in a quiet venue. Everybody gets it. They're all sitting facing forward and listening. There's no food, and they're there for the music. And I believe that that's an opportunity for the artist to also really think about their set list and the songs that can be played in that venue that wouldn't be a good fit for other venues, right? And for me, anyways, if I could sum it all up in one word, it's classy, and it starts with meeting you at the front door, you know?
Yes, well, people have said this so many times that they feel when they come to the Registry Theatre that they're part of something, they're part of a community. And you're quite right, Marshall, that when artists come to, especially local artists who are used to playing, and no disrespect to some of the other venues that are bars and that kind of a venue, when they're coming in, now they're coming into a formal, if you will, soft seat venue where people are paying attention, and I think that they really it really elevates the performance. Sort of they up their game for the Registry, knowing that they have this opportunity to really perform and be appreciated, you know, with perfect sound and lighting, as you said before, sight lines ideal, every last seat in the place as a winner, and it really, and as a result of that, it has allowed so many local artists to grow and then move on, as Sam said, in their careers onto bigger and better things. That some come back just because they feel so taken care of and helped in their early days by the Registry, that they will come back. And in other cases, then they move on to much bigger things, and we're delighted to see them succeed. And then, as Sam says, we look to the next artist that we can nurture.
And we were talking about wrestling, and you would know this term when it comes to wrestling, a suspension of disbelief, which is what fans do when you enjoy wrestling instead.
Or
magic. Yeah. And what the Registry can do that, for example, that for me as a visitor, that the center and the square can't do, a venue I just adore and love.
Absolutely.
When I'm in the center and the square, I'm always aware that I'm in the center of the square. If Blue Rodeo's on stage, I know at all times I'm in the center of the square.
For some reason, I'm always wondering if I can see the fire exits.
Yeah, you're aware of the mezzanine and the balconies and stuff. But when you're in the Registry, if I came to the Registry and saw a performance of The Odd Couple, which I did, because of the nature of that space and the black box you speak of, I actually enter into that world for an hour and a half. I am completely immersed in that world that Felix and Oscar are experiencing. And I don't think about anything else around me except that performance, because I'm always sitting in the front row. I love the front row. And not too many places can make that happen, right? There's something in your peripheral, you know what I mean? But not the Registry.
Yeah, well, that kind of intimacy is one of the main value propositions of the Registry, is as being able to come and have that kind of experience. I think we're also filling an important niche in the community. I find myself talking about the arts ecosystem a lot, and I grew up in Kitchener. I moved to Edmonton for 10 years. I did my master's degree there, and then I kind of hung out there because I kept getting work, because Edmonton's a great theater town. And Edmonton's got a whole lot of stuff going on that I think is really working in its favor, that I've tried to copy, or I've kept sort of in mind as when I came back to Kitchener about 10 years ago and started running the Registry and thinking about how it fit in. Edmonton, part of the reason it's so successful is it's interesting to hear you say it's classy. And it is. And I think Lawrence is the one who injects a lot of the class into it, because also what I think we are is scrappy. You're able to come in, you're able to rent it for a reasonable amount of money. But not only that, you're able to come in and operate the gear yourself. We give you a quick whirlwind tour of how to work the lighting and the soundboard. And then you can operate those things yourself. And I find that Kitchener, and I think Waterloo too, but Kitchener for the most part has a real entrepreneurial sort of energy about it. A real, I'll do it myself, thank you very much, sort of energy. And that's fine. I mean, I'm the same way. And we can harness that and enable ambitious, hungry people to put on their own show. And in some ways, I think that's one of the best things that we offer is being an affordable, accessible venue with a support team that's kind of watching and paying attention, that has an ear for when a person is asking some questions or not asking other questions. So I can say something like, it sounds to me like you might benefit from having a technician. I can connect you with a person who'll do it for like $20 an hour, and they'll do this and that and the other for you. And then you won't have to worry about those things. You can just focus on putting on your show. And they go, oh, really? Can I do that? And they didn't even realize that there was this. So I think that's one of the main spots where we are levering the most benefit to the community, is by enabling and supporting that energy. And right now we're one of the only spaces that does it. Other spaces, when you get too big, like the center and the square, you've got facilities, you've got equipment. You can't just let anybody go and grab that and start using it. We're fortunate that we can, and we do.
My first experience of the registry was sometime after it opened, and as Sam was saying, I just happened to read something in the local record newspaper about a play that looked really quite fascinating, and I thought, this looks really interesting. It was a local playwright, Paddy Gillard by name, who's still very much around and one of the driving forces of Asphalt Jungle Shorts, which is coming up soon, the sort of site-specific theatre around the area. And anyway, I saw this play that being there, and it said at the Registry Theatre, and I thought, what's the Registry Theatre? And so I looked at the address on Frederick, and I thought, like, I must drive by that place every day. Like, what the hell is?
It's kind of tucked back just a hair.
What is that? So next day I'm coming home, and I come off of Weber and down Frederick heading home. I live near the auditorium. And there it was, just kind of quietly sitting there, So the play was running that week, and so anyway, so Saturday night came, and it was closing night, and so I'd been doing other things, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to check this place out. So I just kind of drove over there at about 5 to 8. And sort of walked in and said, "Oh, hi, I'm here for a play." She said, "Oh, you're just in time. We're just about to close the doors and start." And so she said, "Let me just check." And so she spoke to somebody, and they said, "Oh, we're sold out, I'm afraid." And I thought, "Wow, that's good," So I said, "Oh, I'm sorry." And then somebody said, "Oh, no, there's one more seat." So I went in, middle of the front row. And it was a wonderful play which has been revived since then, called Shaking the Dew from the Lily. And it's a play that involves a number of women, as it turns out, who are in a department store, let's say the Bay or something. And this is pre-cell phone, okay, this is going back a number of years, that the store closes, and they were in the bathroom. And so they get trapped overnight. And so all kinds of personal stories unfold. It's a delightful play. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And I thought to myself, wow, what a great little space this is. I bet this would be good for music. And I have a history of producing music in years gone by. And so then when I was working in television in Toronto at the time, and when I resigned from that position, I thought, I wonder if I could get back, maybe do something at that little Registry Theatre. And so I checked it out. It wasn't that expensive. It was just a few $100s. I thought, hey, even if it's not successful, I'm only going to lose a few $100, above and beyond the fees, So I thought, I'm just going to put on a few things that I would like to see. To be honest with you, I wasn't really thinking about the community, and I just thought that there's a lot of artists that you'll never see around here. So the very first person I brought in was the wonderful guitar player Kevin Bright. And he's gone on to do many, many things. He's played with Norah Jones and so many other big American names. And so I brought Kevin in with his band, and then the rest is sort of history, because I kept on doing that. It was a lot of fun. And then at some point along the way, the board invited me to program, because in those days, JM Drama was on the one hand doing their productions, but then the theatre was just available for community rentals, and it was becoming increasingly popular as people found out about it. But then the board came to me and said, well, we feel that it's our responsibility to also curate programming, to have our own, if you will, in-house series, to complement what the community is doing, and so on and so forth. And so that's how our professional programming began to develop. And so we've gone on in a variety of genres, musical genres, as well as, of course, the contemporary dance, which Sam curates, and our theatre productions that he also curates. And so it's just grown like Topsy from then, to the point where we're just about to kick off our 20th anniversary season.
Just talking about the variety of programming that the theater offers. You had Quentin Barnes, one of a Bonn Park favorite, Joni Narita, Cliffs of Moher, I think, which is a local band. And we had Tara Butler on the show. She had a run there as well. The plays, the local, I mean, I've gone to see like my kids' friends' plays there before. It feels like a place of celebration for our community. And that variety of programming, I think, is what keeps that alive. Talk about that, what you're looking at when you're looking forward to booking a season, to getting that happening and getting the community excited about it.
A lot of my programming through dance and theater. Dance and theater is very expensive to present. It's usually high needs in terms of tech time to set up, and as a result makes it more expensive that way. So the only way that I can really present dance and theater is with funding support. I've been very fortunate to find an organization called Ontario Presents that subsidizes artist fees. But what usually ends up happening is that I'm part of a community of presenters in Southern Ontario, and we collectively book tours. And that's one of the ways that we can sort of amortize and share costs and make it all viable for ourselves financially. So a lot of what I'm programming, it's not a situation where I go out and I look at the entire world of what's available and I say what I would like. But that doesn't mean that I'm sort of just robotically programming whatever is handed to me, because this group of presenters, they're working at performing arts centers in Kingston and Oakville and St. Catharines, and are really savvy and smart about the sorts of conversations that communities want to be having. And so I have the opportunity to bring in Indigenous stories, stories about diversity and newcomers to Canada, or communities that might have been here for generations but that are racialized or marginalized. And so that's one of the main approaches that we are collectively taking to programming these days, is that I personally believe that, I'm going to not just say it's what I believe, telling your story is a universal human right. It's necessary. It's essential, especially at a time when we're worried about things like fascism, when we're worried about sort of strongman central leadership that unfortunately seems to be coming back into fashion. One of the best antidotes we have for that is education and the arts. And so that's what I try to do. But at the same time, if you program a show that is just a pamphlet or like a brochure that's basically been theatricalized, audiences are smart. We consume a whole lot of art. And even though you might not identify as an artist, you've watched a ton of Netflix. You've watched a lot of TV shows. And you can sense when a person is trying to hand you information, and that you kind of turn on a different part of your brain that's like, oh, okay, yep, this is the cause and these are the things. Well, the best things to do is like Lauren says, it's kind of making me think that he didn't start programming based on data or metrics or what kind of objectives he wanted to achieve in the community. It was just stuff he wanted to see. And I think the same is true. If you want to start essential conversations about diversity, equity, inclusion, rather than put on a show that's like proclaiming we're going to try to change your mind on this thing, just tell a human story. Just tell an engaging human story that is sensitive on those fronts, as any story should be. And that is going to be the best. So that's what I'm always looking out for. And that's what my community is always looking for, is where are the stories? Where are the fundamental sort of things that are going to make people connect who might not have ever considered this point of view before? If that's what we can do for even one person, then that's the change that we can ideally make.
And when it comes to on the music side of things, we try to partner, and that's one of the very much part of the ethos of the Registry Theatre to partner with artists and empower them. And one of the great examples is the local volunteer group that's been around for many, many years called the Old Chestnut Song Circle. And they were back in the day just doing their song circle in somebody's living room. And then at one point they had the opportunity to bring in a sort of a relatively well-known folk artist. And so they thought, well, this is not going to work in somebody's living room. So they actually rented the Registry Theatre just independently. I spotted that right away and then approached them and said, look, this is a great concept that you brought. Is there any interest in actually developing a series at the theatre above and beyond your song circles? Maybe you might be interested. And so that's how Folk Night at the Registry developed. And so the season that we're in is actually their 15th anniversary season, and it has become, I dare say, probably the best folk music series in Canada. There's very few coffee houses around anymore. There just aren't those venues. There's not a lot of folk clubs anymore. But a Folk Night at the Registry is a going concern, and it's selling out with some of the great folk musicians, Canadian, but also we've had some, like an Archie Fisher, who's an icon in Scotland. We brought him over. American folk artists, and these are the great storytellers too. And so that has become successful. So when we approach on the music side of things, we try to be as diverse as possible when it comes to the music. So we've got the folk music, we've got the singer-songwriters. We've been developing some hip hop and rap music programming to expand and to serve that audience. A bit of jazz. We were, in fact, it was the success of our jazz series that actually was proof of concept for a part of the research that was done to create the Jazz Room in Waterloo. And the Jazz Room's become the Hall of Record, I will call it that. At the same time, we still continue to do our jazz programming, and we'll still be able to do concert-type programming that is just not suitable for the Jazz Room. It's not suitable for a bar club where people are moving back and forth with plates of food and drinks and so on. So we've got, for example, Barbara Lika, one of Canada's foremost jazz singers, and she's actually coming to the Registry Theatre with a 14-piece orchestra. We're the only people that can do that. That's not going to happen at the Jazz Room, for example. And we are the only people in the area who are presenting silent films with a live band. So that's and we've been doing that for a number of years with the local ensemble, the VOC Silent Film Harmonic, which is a wonderful group of professional artists who are presenting a sort of improvised soundtrack, one where they have a sense of where they're going from scene to scene, but they can improvise within that. We present a variety of classical programming, all the way from Baroque to new modern classics. So we're trying to sort of cover the waterfront there in terms of what we can offer, again, which is not available in other venues from a music standpoint.
But to your point, Jack Cole, the programmer of the Folk Night at the Registry series, didn't start it because he wanted to create one of Canada's foremost folk series. He was inviting folk musicians who he admired to his living room for a drum circle, just to hang out and play and to meet them and to get a chance to see and actually play music with these people. And it grew from that. It grew from one person and eventually a group of people's passion for this art form and to meet and interact with the art.
Does it work like this? So when I think about live musicians playing in front of a silent movie, so I remember the first time I heard of this was the very old one of the first horror movies, Vampire, which was right up there with Nosferatu. Right?
Sure, yeah, we've screened both of those.
Yeah, so what happens is Stephen Severin of Susie and the Banshees in England created a whole new soundtrack for that, or I guess the first soundtrack for that movie. Mm-hmm. And then incredible restoration happens for the film, and this all comes to life, and it's incredible. I guess what happens with very old movies is there's things that become public domain, I think, when they're so old. And that's an incredible thing, the idea that in 2022, you can take a very old film that would have had its own life at one point in theaters and bring it to the present, mm-hmm. and then put live music to it. And there are no barriers in the way to stop that from being
No, in
presented.
terms of public domain, there's no legal issue there. And a lot of these really old silent films were designed to have piano accompaniment. That's how it would have been back in the day. It would have rolled in and they would have put it on in whatever sort of community center or, just barn house they could find, and they'd get an upright piano and someone to be playing along with it. So it's tailor-made to have that sort of music support.
Sometimes I feel like a very special theater you can feel its past when you walk in, as though something has been left behind from those previous performances. Sarah knows I've had a lifelong fascination with the movie The Shining, because that's what The Shining is about. Something happened a long time ago that has left something behind that only, in that case, two people can feel and see. But I often feel like when I walk into a theater like the Registry Theatre, you can feel some kind of vibrations or something I think possibly are part of long ago performances and things that have been left behind.
Who was it who walked into the space? She was, when I first started working there in 2011, you told me the story, Lawrence. If she walked into the space and she just stopped, she was like, "Oh, there's good energy here. I can really feel the good vibes in this space." So yeah, we've had a lot of people speak to that kind of vibe, that kind of energy. We've also had a lot of people talk about how the registry's haunted. Now, I'm very curious to see some kind of ghost, and I kind of surprised myself a couple of years ago when I was there alone late at night, and I hear this loud banging. And before I even knew what I was doing, I had my phone out, and I was recording, and I was running towards the source of the disturbance.
No, don't go there.
Yeah, I know.
I feel like I'm
I
watching
watch
the movie.
horror movies. I don't know why I did that. Well, I do know why I do it. And of course, it's just the pipes were rattling because somebody had turned off a radiator upstairs. But that's the thing, is I think if I was a ghost, I would not reveal myself to some jerk like me who was trying to get video of it. I'd be like, no, whatever, man, go find another hobby.
This isn't scary.
I will reveal myself to somebody who's a little bit more into the ethereal side of things. But yes, we have a lot of people talking about the energy or the spiritual activity at the registry.
Yeah, and I think uniformly the artists have enjoy the performance in many ways as much as the audience does, because they feel again, as we've spoken about, just the whole ambience of the place and the sound and the lighting and so on and so forth, that they really, as I said before, rise to the occasion. So I think there's just a lot of good energy stored up in that auditorium for sure.
Even when you, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say the audio quality, we lucked out into it because it was not designed to be an audio space.
It's beautiful in there.
But we got very lucky with the sound quality and have been fortunate to benefit from some sound engineers who've been like, hang a curtain here. But we've now done many live CD recordings in this space, and it's well regarded by sound technicians.
Yes, in fact, our local group, again, we're about the only place they can fit, and that's Big Band Theory, which is an 18-piece big band jazz ensemble, and they are coming to us to do their annual charity fundraiser at Christmas time of 2022, and they love the space to the point where the Juno-nominated, very very well known, worked with the Northern Pikes, of course. That's the great Rick Hutt. He's produced already 2 CDs. At the registry, recorded at the registry. 2 of them were recorded live. One was a regular CD, and the other one was a Christmas-oriented program. And then they are currently at the registry for just using it as a dedicated studio, no audience, and they've already recorded a number of tracks with Rick Hutt for their new CD, and they just love the space, and they're just among a number of people who've used it as a wonderful recording studio, especially for a big band, where you need the space and to stretch out, and then of course Rick Hutt comes in and does his magic.
We're going to take a moment to hear from this episode's sponsor.
Ever wondered what happens inside a black hole?
Or what quantum mechanics tells us about reality?
Curious about how the universe began or how it will end?
Feed your curiosity with Conversations at the Perimeter, a science podcast from Perimeter Institute for Theoretical Physics.
On each episode, we chat with a different scientist about the grandest questions in the universe, from the quantum to the cosmos.
Geek out to Conversations at the Perimeter, wherever you get your podcasts.
And now back to the show. Saying, no, we're doing good work here.
Yeah.
And if anyone wants to come see it, they can come see it.
There's this complicated relationship between Kitchener and Toronto and what all that means. And I'm kind of like, honestly, and I hope this doesn't come off as sounding like I'm a dick, I'm bored of the whole Toronto conversation. Like where it's not an apples to apples comparison. Like, is anybody in Yonkers, New York, talking about how they have to create a world-class scene there? No, of course not. New York is an hour down the road, just like Toronto's an hour down the road from us. And we can look at that as a great challenge, or we can say, okay, so we're here to try to prepare people to head off and do that. Or on the other hand, you mentioned Tara Butler. We work with her quite closely. Kitchener is rich with artists who had professional careers and are either transitioning into the next stage of their professional career, or have taken some kind of other job but still want to keep it alive as like a side hustle or something that they're doing.
Or are content to stay and entertain the community where they grew up.
And hey, maybe massive exponential growth is not good for humanity. Maybe we need to stop trying to grow and make everything go global and just work on sustaining the artists we have, supporting the emerging artists we have, and engaging the ones that we have in this community. And let's stop the whole comparing ourselves to Toronto situation. It just feels so unhealthy.
But isn't comparison the thief of joy, right? If we can find our own joy within our own community here and create with it and share that with everyone else. I mean, there's something so rich and delicious to me about working for myself, and a client will pay me and I take that money and I might go to our farmer's market and pay a farmer, and then that farmer's going to go and pay with their services. There's something that feels so good about keeping that money local. It just feels right. It just feels like the way it's supposed to be. Right.
And all this pressure to expand and grow. And we even get it from some of our grant sponsors who, I understand they're dealing with an old template and they have to keep abiding by it too. But you always have to be adding. You always have to be growing. Yeah. It's like,
can we not just support and sustain this thing that kept everyone's kids fed and a roof over our heads and entertained our community?
And we're delighted to be working with an established, accomplished choreographer like Tara Butler, who's now, working with us to develop contemporary dance in the community, which Sam's been working on for a number of years now.
Because there's been a gap for that, right? Like that hasn't really been filled?
No.
We don't have, until Tara came along, we really did not have a professional dance company locally. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of one of my side objectives when I started presenting professional dance 10 years ago is I hope maybe one day I can help to establish this, and it's happening.
Yeah. And of course, Tara, she's now nurturing the next generation of dancers and choreographers. So it's wonderful. We're just delighted. We're so happy to be involved with her.
So I'm going to ask like a wrap-up question that we'll put in. I feel like we could talk for hours, but I know we only have this 1 hour for the show. We can talk for there's no control over our own content, but we like to keep it around an hour. But if we're going to look towards the future, like what is your hope and your dream, and what are you hoping for the Registry Theatre for the future, for the next year? I know some of it is bums in seats, right? Because having people come out has been a big, having people come out to shows, right? Like this has been the one thing that we can't do, sit side by side with each other and enjoy something. And now that you can,
I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be in a scarcity situation. I felt awkward sort of revealing this, but we've done okay with government supports through the registry. And I take that as a huge responsibility. I have been entrusted with some taxpayer dollars, and I am eager to distribute that to the community, to pay artists and technicians and producers and stage managers to do what they do. We have been doing that all through the pandemic. We're going to keep doing it. But I would say if there's an ambition I have for the registry, okay, so a lot of people look at this, I'm holding up my smartphone, as the antithesis of theater, as the enemy of theater. I'm not into that. For one thing, it's inevitable. You're not going to fight. People are not going to just stop having smartphones. I've seen a couple of awkward attempts to incorporate smartphones and technology into live performance. Nothing has really set my mind on fire yet. Live tweeting is not the answer. Or, being able to, I saw one improv show where audience members were able to text an actor on stage a line, and then the actor had to say that as part of the.
That's kind of interesting.
So we're getting closer to that immersive experience, but I think there is something coming that's going to achieve that. What we're looking to VR to do right now is that immersive, participatory, creative engagement. And I think it's coming. It's going to represent a paradigm shift for our industry. And I think that the smaller organizations who've invested wisely in some tech toys and who has an ethos around letting people play with their toys. My goal right now is to try to get grant monies to buy projectors, cameras, and any other fun, a little bit road tested. I'll let some of the bigger houses, buy the first iteration of this so they work out the bugs in it. But I want to make sure the registry is a place where a person can maybe, download an app and they'll have all the registry specs in there. They'll be able to plug it into our system and boom, your show is ready to go. To have that kind of tech ready to support that paradigm shift when it does come. And that's not to say that I want to abandon our 55 to 75-year-old audiences. They're hugely important. I want to keep doing the kind of programming they connect with. But I'm curious about creating a platform like that anybody can come to and use with relatively little experience, but still have an engaging, immersive experience and have fun playing with the gear that we get.
And have you talked about like a theater space in the metaverse?
No, that hasn't come up yet. I'm a kind of a quick adopter of that kind of stuff. I have an Oculus. And I haven't seen an example. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to be able to buy a ticket to like a Bruce Springsteen show and go in VR, but be able to fly over the stage and be on stage.
If
with
we're gonna do it,
Bruce
let's do it
and little Steve,
like right,
and actually go backstage and see what's
Yeah.
happening back there, because
Yeah.
that's what VR is going to offer. That unless you're a VIP in the real world, you can't get.
Yeah, and VIP costs money.
And we want to continue to nurture our local artists and give them performance opportunities, help them develop their careers, and see them sort of move on to bigger and better things. And if we can continue to do that, I think we'll not only serve the community with great projects, but also help along the artists. I mean, our poster child that we always point to, and happy to do so, and that's Kevin Ramasar, who came out of this community. I first met Kevin when he had just graduated in classical guitar performance at Laurier. I brought him to the registry, and that's some of what he did. But his career has grown and grown since then. We've done so many projects with him, and it was as a result of one of his subsequent concerts at the registry where someone from the Stratford Festival spotted him. He was invited to audition. He became a member of the festival orchestra. That was back in the day of Des McAnuff, who was a big-time producer, was the artistic director at Stratford. And he did a number of projects during his tenure, one of the last of which was the revival of The Who's Tommy, which he then took and toured and took Kevin Ramasar with him as part of the musical ensemble. And at that point in time, Kevin wound up in New York, made some connections with other musicians, began to get work there, and went on to some great things to the point where now he's actually will be performing. He went as the associate music director of the recent big production Paradise Square on Broadway, and now he's actually acting in the revival of the black production of Death of a Salesman. So that just the arc of his career is remarkable, and to think that it all started at the Registry Theatre. So wherever we can do that, and we have other artists in the pipeline that we're working with diligently, and hoping to see them make the same sort of trajectory, onwards and upwards.
Bonn Park is made possible with the support of the Kitchener Public Library and the Kitchener-Waterloo Community Foundation.
Our show is produced by Sarah Geidlinger,
And Marshall Ward.
with audio engineering by Sarah Geidlinger.
Bonn Park's original music is by Alan Lung. Harry, still with us? We want to tell you about a fun project that we have. Are you ready?
Yeah.
We have another podcast called An Unscripted Spectacle, Wrestling with Wrestling. Here's Colin Hunter of Kayfabe News to tell you all about it.
Welcome to An Unscripted Spectacle, Wrestling with Wrestling. I'm Colin Hunter from Kayfabe News. Marshall is utterly obsessed with professional wrestling. Sara is utterly perplexed by professional wrestling. On each episode of An Unscripted Spectacle, Marshall and Sara talk with a different guest from the world of wrestling. Promoters, referees, journalists, and current and past stars of the Squared Circle to talk deeply about the strange magic of professional wrestling that has enchanted Marshall his whole life. Can they turn Sara into a fellow connoisseur of professional wrestling? She'll need some convincing.
I find out who Jimmy Corderas is. Who the heck are you?
Oh, well, that's a good question. For those who don't know, I spent the better part of over 2 decades working in WWF/WWE, mostly as a referee inside the ring.
I have the honor of meeting the magnificent Lufisto.
I heard that you were described as the first lady of hardcore. I've just recently found out what hardcore is.
Yeah, thanks to Madman Pondo.
When I've learned that I was going to be inducted, it was like, it is now my time to tell the story of women's wrestling. Because so many times I've heard, oh, this is the first time this happens in women's wrestling history. And I'm like, no.
I learned all about the storytelling and writing process from Tom Casiello.
Yeah, I was in soap operas for 14 years. I was at Young and the Restless last. That was from 2009 to 2011. And so I thought, I'll go in for the interview. I'll be honest with them. If I blow it, I blow it. Not the end of the world. And I was there for 6 years. And I rose up the ranks to managing lead writer. And it was the most insane time period of my entire life.
I got a new skincare regime from RJ City.
Checking out your hair, and I wish that mine looked like yours. You have beautiful locks.
Thank you. The secret, this isn't a plug, it feels like an endorsement, is aloe vera. I have it here. I put it on my skin. I put it in my hair. I use the gel. I put a couple drops of peppermint in.
I have a plant right there on my
Good.
fridge.
Cut it open, squeeze it out, and put it, honestly, wherever you want. It's good for you.
I find out that Colt Cabana is just famous enough that he can still buy groceries. And Tyson Kidd tells me all about the People's Elbow. Who knew?
Tyson comes to a complete stop, then brings his leg over the guy like he's going to do a leg drop. But the leg like keeps circling past the guy, and then he drops an elbow on the guy.
Oh, and the elbow represents like all the people of the fans?
Like
he's been voted, he's going to drop this elbow?
Well, he started calling himself the People's Champion, and then that move just became the People's Elbow.
And then there's also, as you know, there's the People's Strudel.
Yeah. I mean, there's the People's Eyebrow. There's a lot of the people. Got a lot of people.
So check out An Unscripted Spectacle, Wrestling with Wrestling. Available anywhere you get your podcasts.